Welcome to the September 6th, 2018 business meeting, and I would ask the county administrator to please take the roll.
Well, good morning, Commissioners. Welcome back from your summer recess. It's another beautiful summer day today. We have Mr. Nate Boderman here representing County Council, and Mary Rathke serving as your clerk to the board this morning. I will start with the roll with Commissioner Humberston.
Here.
Commissioner Fisher.
Here.
Commissioner Schrader.
Here.
Commissioner Savas.
Here.
Chair Bernard.
Here. Please join me in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, Don, what's up first?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a very special presentation this morning, and I'm going to be inviting Tracy Moreland, who is a policy advisor in the County Commissioner's Office, to talk about this item. But this is a presentation recognizing Damon Faust as the American Legion's Firefighter of the Year. So, Tracy, go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Tracy Moreland from County Administration. I am here to introduce Damon Faust for recognition by the board, recently named Firefighter of the Year by the American Legion. There's also some special guests here to help honor Damon. And also Ree Armitage from Senator Wyden's office wanted to speak on behalf of our federal delegation in just a few minutes. First, a little bit about Damon. Damon is a resident of Clackamas County. He's employed by the Warm Springs tribe as a firefighter and EMT on their reservation lands, which, as you know, is a neighbor to the county. And Damon also volunteers his time for Estacada Rural Fire District. Last week, Damon traveled to Minneapolis to attend the American Legion National Conference, where he received the Firefighter of the Year award from that organization. That award, according to the American Legion, is bestowed upon a firefighter who has exceeded the requirements expected of his or her position and has shown a distinct pattern of community service and professional achievement. Additionally, Damon is a veteran who has served with the U.S. Army for 7 years and was awarded the Soldier's Medal for heroism for his actions in Iraq. Later, he worked with disaster relief organization Team Rubicon, which he assisted many communities affected by natural disasters, including Hurricane Sandy, the Oso mudslides in Washington State, and the devastating tornadoes in Oklahoma. He worked with the group Hero Client Rescue, and in Haiti, he trained emergency medical technicians after Hurricane Matthew. But it is his service in the Estacada Rural Fire District that Damon helped enhance the district's Veteran to Firefighter program, which connects veterans with the fire service when they return home from military service and provides mentorship. It was this program, the Veteran to Firefighter program, that was one of the primary reasons he was honored last week at the American Legion's convention. And I could go on, but I'm sure you'd much rather hear from him and Ree as well.
Well, I'd also like to welcome Senator Chuck Thompson here. Chuck Robbins. And I don't know if you'd like to say something after Damon comes up or not.
This is Damon's day.
Okay. I notice he doesn't have a mustache anymore. So Renee and Damon, you want to come up to the dais? I think Ree, you wanted to say something first?
Sure. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, and Mr. Faust, I think I'll keep this short and just say it's an honor on behalf of Senator Wyden and the rest of our Clackamas County's federal delegation. And I'll sum it up by the great title of the pamphlet article that Service Above Self. And at a time like this, I think we need somebody like Mr. Faust more than ever to set an example for us. So it's an honor to read a letter here on behalf of Senator Wyden and the rest of the federal delegation, and to present Mr. Faust with a flag, U.S. flag, flown over the United States Capitol. So I will read this letter. Dear Damon, we write to offer our congratulations on your recent and well-deserved honor as the American Legion National Firefighter of the Year. Olive Oregon is proud of you for earning this tremendous award that recognizes you as an exceptional Oregonian and American. We are gratified to learn you plan to use this national recognition to promote your community's Veteran to Firefighter program, which connects veterans with the Estacada Rural Fire District as they make the transition back to civilian life. And we note proudly that this innovative local program is just the latest in an impressive line of your personal accomplishments that include service with the U.S. Army, helping disaster relief assistance for people devastated by Hurricane Sandy, the Oslo mudslide in Washington State, the Moore tornado in Oklahoma, and your training of emergency medical technicians in Haiti in the aftermath of Hurricane Matthew. Your extensive record of local, national, and international service to your community stands out as extraordinary, and we thank you for it. Sincerely, Ron Wyden, Jeff Merkley, Earl Blumenauer, and Kurt Schrader. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, man.
Damon, would you like to say anything?
Sure. I'll stand. I'm super stoked. It's very awkward for me to do these things. I think I'm getting better. And it was touched on really the program, or the emphasis here is the Veteran to Firefighter program. It's been slow going. My hope is that this gets a little ump behind it, and we're able to do things, not just in Estacada, but the other rural districts within Clackamas County, where they could take our program and mirror it. That's really my hope. That's all I have. Thank you. It's extremely honored.
Well, thank you, and we would also like to present you with some recognition, National Firefighter of the Year. We're going to come around, take a photo. Thank you for your outstanding dedication and service to Clackamas County and its citizens, and we wish to extend our sincere appreciation. We also have some folks from the American Legion, from the fire departments, and I don't know if any of you would like to add anything. By the way, you'd have to have a mic. So, Ree, why don't you step aside? If somebody'd like to add something, please come forward. Because usually these require somebody send in something in recognition of your outstanding service.
Good morning. My name is Terry Brown. I'm commander of the American Legion Post 74 in Estacada, and we're the ones who nominated Damon for the national award. But I'd also like to impress upon you the significance of the award. This was the 100th convention of the American Legion. American Legion started in 1919. But at this convention, Damon was awarded this certificate and a plaque. But this is the first firefighter from the American Legion from Oregon that's been named Firefighter of the Year. So in all of these, and he competed with 50 other departments. So it's a significant award for Oregon and for Damon. So congratulations.
So we're going to give you this, and then Representative Lewis is here too. If you would like to say anything. No? Well, will you please join us for a photo, though? Come on up, and we'll take a photo and give you our certificate. How about all you folks from the American And thank you all very much for taking the time to come in and celebrate and appreciate Damon. Thank you. So we have citizen communication next. Claire and Les.
Chair Bernard and members of the commission, Claire Clock, Corwood, Oregon, I'd just like to come today. There's zoning on the boards. I don't have a general comment, and that, as you know, I'm a fan of preserving farmland. And as I travel around the Portland, the Multnomah, Clackamas area, what I'm seeing is buildings that are going up similar to the buildings we're sitting in now, that's 3, 4, 5, 6 stories, the one across the way here, and it's happening all over Portland and the metro area. And that is probably the best way to keep us from moving out onto farmland and preserving our natural resources is for that type of development. I've been talking about this for 25, 30 years now with Metro and the rest, and so I just like to thank you, because the building across here was one of the first ones that was outside a core city area that was more than 1 to 2 stories. So thank you for that. That's all I have to say today. Thank you.
Thank you for coming today. Les?
Good morning, Les Poole. I obviously live in Clackamas County. If I had time, I'd spend all of my 4 minutes on complimenting the firefighters. As most of you know, I'm a co-petitioner for a statewide initiative to require a vote on the tolling scheme, as people are calling it. And that took me to Southern Oregon. As a property owner and someone that worries about their trees regularly and thinks about the effects of what's been going on, it was just amazing. 40 miles before you got to Klamath Falls, there was signs warning you of smoke ahead. And you'd been in smoke for 10 miles. And that was coming up from California. And from there I drove to Medford. And in Medford, in Jackson County, the air was clear in the morning, and by 3 in the afternoon, we were choking. I was in Grants Pass. I've been all over Oregon, and I can assure you that I've never seen anything to this degree. And I've never been more grateful for those that are up there protecting our property. No time to talk about the need to change some management and some of the options we have to do things differently. And it's so easy when you have these fires to say it's all global warming, or it's all mismanagement, or logging would fix it all. There is no one cure for everything, but it's very clear that the federal policies really don't mirror the states. And the states' policies really don't mirror the communities on the ground in a lot of ways. So there's much to be done there. And I know Clackamas County as an entity is also a property owner. I can't imagine what would happen if the property that the county owns up Wildcat Mountain or anywhere else went up in flames. What effect that would just have. That one fire of 20 or 30 acres can be devastating, especially when it's your property. Up in Mosier, they have a sign on the fire station. And I can't tell you how many times Mosier's been threatened. And Mosier's just the other side of Hood River. And that sign says, volunteer. Back to Commissioner Saviz's theme, let's volunteer, let's help out. And that volunteer sign says that if you volunteer to be a firefighter here, the property you save may be your own. And that says a lot about what we need. We need people volunteering. We need informed citizens. We got a real crisis on our hand. So not enough time to go any further with that. I do want to conclude by thanking everyone that has signed our petition. We had 1,500 signatures in 2 weeks, and now we're expecting the next step in the process to occur in a couple of days. The Secretary of State will announce whether or not we have 1,000 good signatures in the mix. Once we do, a ballot title will be created, and over time, that process will take a couple of months. But sometime after the election, we'll be ready to start collecting signatures again, and I've never been involved in a transportation project or effort where I have seen 80 to 90% of the people supporting what we're doing. So it's going to send a big message to ODOT and to the state that they need to tighten up their budget, they need to realign some priorities, and if they want to fix congestion, charging us to use existing roads and putting that money into a big pit is not the solution. Thank you much, as always.
Well, I hope that one thing, and what you just said at the very end, I think is really important.
Right.
If we're going to increase capacity, I don't have a problem with paying to increase capacity, but I do have a problem if it doesn't solve anything. So the other comment you made about fires, Clackamas County owns land, like you said, up on the mountain, and that funds our Clackamas Parks district. I guess is it a district? Clackamas Parks. And if that were to burn, I don't know what we would do to keep our parks going. So and we really are great stewards of our forests that we own and have control of. So yeah, that's a great concern to us at Clackamas County, as our parks are very important to us. I'm not talking about local North Clackamas Parks District. I'm talking about the countywide parks. So thanks for mentioning that issue. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, Bob Mahoney. Mahona. Thank you, Chuck.
Commissioners, good morning.
Morning.
My name is Bob Mahoney. I live in Oregon City. I hope you don't mind. I'll keep my hat on. Keeps me grounded. Some of us get a little crazy and run for office, and I'll be darned if they don't get elected. So anyway, I want to talk to you about something you probably already know. Everybody knows it. But and I commend you for putting faces on some of the problems. It just can't all be a problem that has no personality to it. And what I want to talk to you about is the homeless. And it doesn't, as you know any boundaries. But I'm thinking that we already have in the works, in our governmental process, some of the solutions to the problem. And that is the services that government already offers: health, employment, transportation, education, things of that sort. We have these agencies and services already at work in our various communities, except basically for our cities. They're not structured to accommodate. But the 3 counties aren't structured to take this on individually. It's going to take a coalition of governments, coalition of counties, under what I would probably estimate be Metro, because there's where the money is to accommodate this. But wouldn't it be something if we could take, and I don't want to be discriminating about this, but if we could take a family that's living in their car, nothing over their head, no employment, the kids aren't in school, and if we could say, okay, we're going to find you a place to live, and you're going to sign a contract for 2 years, 1 year, I don't care. We're going to find you a job. We're going to put your kids in school. If you've got a health problem, we're going to get the kids inoculated. We're going to find that your health is going to be taken care of. And whatever other services that we have in place. And we would coordinate that through Metro and get these kids and get these people off the street. get them educated, get the kids educated, get them fed, and do all this in a coordinated manner through one agency. We can't afford not to solve this problem. But right now, I get the feeling that we just don't know how to go about it. There's nobody stepping up to the plate and said, hey, let's put together a task force under the umbrella of Metro and proceed and get this job done. And I see I'm out of time, but I'm going to be sending you a white paper, so to speak, with some of these suggestions on it. I might send it through the Marine Corps up here. And so be careful. Sometimes you know the Marines. Okay, so that's all I got to say. And keep up the good work. And whatever you do, keep putting faces on these problems, because it eventually boils down to people and the services you deliver. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Paul.
Oh, and one other thing. I noticed as you came in, all of the commissioners had coffee in their hands. I walked through that door, no coffee offered. So you might just have a pot there boiling at the door.
That's a very
Thank you.
nice, that's actually a nice idea. I'm going to do that.
Paul?
Yeah, I just want to say that I want to make sure, I've always had this really, I guess, call it a propensity to try to make sure that when, especially when we're up here as elected officials, that we communicate as accurately to our public as we can. And I think we all genuinely want to be able to solve the problem, and I don't think there's a way of truly solving the problem. I think we can help some of those people, but there's just simply not the resources, regardless what bond or what measure there is to do that. So the difficulty, and I remember testifying at Metro, is that the difficulty is who we help, which is a good thing, but what will be more difficult is who we are unable to help. And I guess that's really where the challenge is. How do we deal with the folks that will be unable to help? And really, I think the bigger problem really is wages are creeping up at a very slow rate. Jobs are back like they've never been, it appears. So the employment picture looks really pretty darn rosy. But right now, it's really the cost of land, the cost of housing that's really accelerated the rents. And there's some people that are taking advantage of that market as well, and they're raising those rents up ridiculously high and forcing a lot of people out on the street. So that's our biggest challenge and the one we have the least control over.
Yeah, I'd like to add a little something to that, too. A lot of what you say, we do already. We do coordinate. I'll give you an example. On I-5, there's a rest area that 30 kids, homeless kids, lived in cars with their parents. We connected them with, actually a school bus went and picked them up there. And we actually coordinated with various agencies and finding them jobs, finding them a place to live. This was a number of years ago, long before we thought that much about homelessness. And we are actually working with the churches and various organizations to connect people to housing, to a place to stay, a safe place, and a place for schools to pick up their kids. And it is very difficult. And those services, mental health, drug addiction, and we are coordinating all that stuff regionally. It's just the demand is so huge, and it's not getting better. And this is not just here. It's all over the country, and no one's found the exact solution. But I would say there is definitely a lot of effort going into it. We do have an employment services department that works with people who not only get out of jail, but other people who are in in the system, law enforcement system. But it also, you know, any effort we can to help anybody, we are working at it and trying to coordinate. So we're definitely much more aware than we used to be. The problem is preventing those people from being out in the street. And some state laws. Various people have different ideas whether it's good or bad. But every community is working hard to figure out a way to resolve this. And we are focusing on redevelopment of 48 acres of land that is occupied by single units in Oregon City, which we're going to be investing at a 4-to-1 ratio. So it all takes so much time is the problem. But we appreciate you being aware and making the citizens more aware of the issue. Sonia?
Yeah, I'm intrigued by your idea of having a coordinated tri-county, or metro being the point of coordination. We banter around these different policy perspectives, and I hadn't thought about there being sort of a regional response. I think that it is a regional issue for sure, and people who are moving from place to place move across our region, so I think that's a really good point. One thing that I've become aware of on the commission, we have a homeless and housing task force of key stakeholders around our Clackamas County community to really come up with some solutions that we can implement countywide and then encourage our cities. We have 16 cities in Clackamas County, so even in some ways Clackamas County is too big because we have to get the buy-in of all of the cities when we're dealing with the issues that Commissioner Savas brought up, which is supply. Supply is a big problem in the chain of where the issues are. But I really appreciate you coming and sharing your ideas. I look forward to reading your white paper, but I want you to noodle around the idea of where are the solutions? Is it more local or is it more macro? Is it more global? Because I think there might be an answer in both.
You can't afford to do it by yourself.
Right?
Metro is the only way that's with the money. And the money's going to come from the state's going to get it from the feds, because we're becoming a nation of refugees. We see it all over the globe. People moving from country to country because the economy's gone gunny sack. Well, it's happening in our own county, and the county can't take it on by itself and shouldn't. Mm-hmm. But we got to put a face to these. This could be us. This could be us.
Mm-hmm. In some ways, it is. Yeah.
But I look at you and I see that glimmer of humanity in your eye. God bless you for that. We'll solve this only if we work together and listen if we listen. Here's a Marine and an Irishman that's always done his business by talking, asking other people to listen. Now, go figure that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Martha?
Yeah, I just want to make a few comments here. We have been working on this for a while, and one of the things that we are doing is a needs analysis across the county. And that is really trying to look at our cities, and I'm going to ask Commissioner Savas, isn't it Goal 10, the requirement to have housing?
For cities.
For land use for cities and land use planning. So we're taking a look at that and trying to assess, because each city is different. So some may need workforce housing, 60% and below. Some may need really subsidized housing, 30% and below. So looking at what the needs are across the continuum. And then, as you said, you've got homeless children too, and how do you help stabilize those families? So we're collecting all that data now as a county. And we have a very, very fine Human Services Division, Public Health Division that is actually collecting all of that now. The other thing that's happening at the state level with our Association of Oregon Counties, we're working with the League of Oregon Cities. We're working directly with the Department of Oregon Housing Services to do pilot projects across the state. And I believe there's one that's ready to go in Tillamook, and I want to see another one in Hermiston as well. And this is working with commissioners who are actually working directly with their counterparts as mayors in a coalition to pull together what their housing needs are in their area. It's a very new concept. It's a pilot project. Margaret Salazar has been very excited about it. And this week, I'll be meeting with the Association of Oregon Cities and the League of Oregon Cities so we can kind of even do more coordination on that issue statewide. So we're doing, I think with my colleagues' help, I think really, really good work, I think, on the local level as well as the state level to try and not become, you know, a county of refugees, because actually that's very true. I mean, I've never seen it quite like this before. So there you go.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I just want to follow up. I think that Commissioner Fisher said something, you know, the macro, whether it's a macro problem or a local problem and so forth. And I think that it's really both. The answer is both, is that the reality, the faces, dealing with the people that I see every morning when I leave in the morning that are either sleeping on the sidewalk or homeless and don't have a place to live. It's very clear they don't. Every day I see that. So, and our job is a deal right now with that crisis that they're going through. We have a responsibility to do that. And that's what our Health and Human Services does. That's what a lot of those folks is. But it was years ago, about 13 years ago, when I first learned about the potential for today. And 13 years ago, it wasn't this bad. We've had years of homelessness. It goes back centuries. There's always been a small percentage of that. But 13 years ago, when I sat on a committee at Metro, MPAC in particular, was the reality that the disparity between the average family wage income and the cost of housing was going to narrow. And when they narrow and then they cross over, meaning that one's more expensive than the other, people lose their homes. That's all there is to it. It just happened faster than we ever anticipated, and it's certainly worse than we ever thought it would be. So I've been trying to be proactive for the last several years. Even that was part of my issue when I ran for commissioner, was part of my issue in 2011, 2012, after I became a commissioner, trying to point out that there are things we're doing that could make it worse. And I think Metro could be part of that proactive solution, and that's the part that's missing. I know that earlier Claire spoke to the land use policies, but to some degree, it's not a fault of Metro, not a fault of the state, but there are consequences. The consequences, the price of land within the urban growth boundaries across the country, those that have them, the price of land is more expensive. And we have a hot job market right now. It's a hot place to live. People are competing for every home that's being bid up, not down. That's making it very tough for anyone of modest means to make a living. So there's consequences for all that. So we're dealing with the here and now, which is at the local level. And at the macro level, I've been hoping that we could be more effective, state and at the metro region, being proactive and trying to examine what we're doing, how to do it better, or not to exacerbate the problem we have today.
And before I go to Ken, I wanted to also mention that we have recently received a grant from the state of Oregon to do a housing needs assessment county-wide. We'll be the first county that does that. So look forward to getting that process going. Ken.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to make my points brief because I know we have to get going. One is you're probably aware we have a Vets Village that should be coming online within the next month to help our homeless veterans. That's a program that I hope if we do it correctly and demonstrate that we can do it correctly to the community, that we can expand to other populations. That's a partial solution. It's certainly not a complete solution, but the first job of us that we have is to make sure we show the community that we can do it right. The other points are somewhat touch on things that you said, Bob. One is that there's 3,069 counties in America, and no place in America can a person making minimum wage afford a two-bedroom apartment. And in only 17 counties can a person making minimum wage afford a one-bedroom apartment. Clackamas County is not one of those counties, by the way. So that's the position we find ourselves in. We've built an economy based on paying as low a wage as we can get away with. And this is the consequence of it. It is poverty, it is homelessness, it's child poverty, it's hunger. And until we address that macro problem as a nation, the best that local government is going to be able to do is a patchwork solution, even including Metro. The bond that they're proposing as currently written is not going to solve the entire problem. It will help some people, but it certainly won't help everyone. In terms of purchasing a home for people who work for a living, Just to give you an idea of what it really means on a house payment, $100,000 at 5%, and I realize that our current mortgage rates are a little lower than 5%, but it's not unusual to have a 5% mortgage. $100,000 is $536 a month. The $200,000 mortgage is $1,072 a month. If it's a $250,000 home, which is a low-priced home in today's market, is over $1,300, and that's just principal and interest. That does not include taxes and insurance. That is what we face. And the money that is made by the construction industry is made in the big houses, not in the $200,000, $250,000 home. Just wanted to put that whole problem in a perspective, both in terms of the macro aspects of it, as well as what we're dealing with locally. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you. Well, with that, we'll move on to adoption of a previous approved land use ordinances.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We have two of these this morning. The first is ZDO 269. It considers the adoption of a previously approved comprehensive plan and zoning development ordinance relating to accessory dwelling units. And we have Mr. Nate Boderman from County Counsel's office here to discuss this one with you.
Thank you, Don. Good morning, Commissioners. As Don mentioned, we do have two previously approved land use items for you this morning, the first of which is ZDO 269, which relates to amendments to the county's comprehensive plan and zoning regulations involving accessory dwelling units. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this on June 25th, 2018, and voted 5-0 to recommend approval of staff's proposal, except the Commission opted to increase the maximum size of these accessory dwelling units from 720 square feet to 900 square feet, and to have no minimum size requirements for manufactured dwellings serving as ADUs in the FF10 zone, the RA1, RA2, and RRFF5 zones inside the urban growth boundary. You'll probably recall that you held a public hearing on this on August 1st of this year, and by a vote of 5-0 orally approved the ZDO 269 proposal is recommended by staff and the Planning Commission, with one exception, that the requirement of owner occupancy be retained, meaning that either the primary or accessory dwelling be occupied by the property owner. So that's the one change that's reflected in the materials in front of you. Staff has drafted the ordinance to reflect that decision that you made on August 1st. Staff's also made a few housekeeping changes, as we do, to standardize formatting and to update citations. But other than that, it's our recommendation that you would approve this proposal.
Okay. Do any commissioners have any clarifying questions? Yes, sir.
I have one, Mr. Chairman, and I know we did discuss this, but I want to make sure it's on the record. Manufactured dwellings does not mean a tin shack. It means a pre-constructed structure, but it shouldn't imply that it is your old-fashioned mobile home. And I want to be certain that the zoning ordinance reflects that.
Yeah, that's correct. And maybe, I don't know if there's a specific definition, maybe any of our planners want to speak to that specifically, but there is an understood definition.
The word manufactured can mean a lot of things to a lot of people.
Correct. And the manufactured dwellings typically fall, well, Jennifer will take it from here because there are building code issues too.
So I wasn't at the hearing on the first. Martha Fritzie is here. She was at that hearing, so if we need to clarify further. But in terms of the way the zoning ordinance works, there are manufactured dwellings, and then there are manufactured homes. So manufactured dwellings is a broader category that includes both mobile homes and manufactured homes. Typically in our urban zones, so if you're in an R10 zone, you can only have the manufactured home. Those are newer, although anymore they're not that new. It's anything built after 1976 that met federal manufactured home construction requirements. In rural zones, which would include the ones that Nate mentioned, the FF10, the RRFF5, you can actually, as a primary dwelling, have a mobile home, which is even older. It can go back to 1962. Again, it had to meet the construction standards that were in effect at that time, excuse me. So under that overarching category, these could be units as old as 1962. It's not terribly common anymore that somebody is citing one of those. It can happen sometimes with temporary dwellings, but there wouldn't be anything to prohibit that if you're going to allow manufactured dwellings.
I'm mostly concerned with a residential neighborhood where people live in much closer proximity to one another than a rural area where you have acreage. What you don't end up with is some shabby shack, quite frankly.
So,
You might be able to hide something like that on a rural piece of property behind a bunch of trees. You can't do that in a residential neighborhood.
so in this case, the zones we're talking about are the 1 acre, 2 acre, 5 acre, and 10 acre zones that this expansion of the law now permits ADUs inside the urban growth boundaries. So they are technically urban areas, but not really. They're still zoned rural. So you would find it in the Damascus area, was the kind of the most common example, I think, where you would find it. So in some of those cases, it could be a neighborhood. You could have a subdivision of 1 acre lots, or in some cases, pre-existing half-acre lots. And currently, our code permits the primary dwelling to be a manufactured dwelling. So it could go back to so it's no different, I guess, is what I'm saying. The ADU would be allowed the same way the primary dwelling would be allowed. And it could be an older unit. And we would not be regulating the aesthetics of that, and would have to meet the building code requirements for citing a manufactured home, but there wouldn't be anything controlling the appearance of that.
Thank you.
Okay, Paul?
Well, so I do want to just make a statement, and that is for those watching, and just remind staff and my colleagues that we did agree to bring this back and fine-tune some of this, because there were some areas in which we wanted to work on. This was one of them. As far as the manufactured housing, I am probably like anyone else up here, I imagine, concerned to some degree that we don't allow some of these older, non-approved manufactured housing allowed that are in disrepair. And some of the older stuff that we once knew of, it was once built, that people are living in today, unfortunately. Sometimes some of those are so poorly, in such bad condition that there's mold, there's issues, there's health issues, and they're not healthy. Today's standards, today's HUD standards, I don't know if we can incorporate that into our language, but today's standards of what's being built today, 2x4 construction, a number of just really well-built stuff. What's built today is quite good, quite acceptable, and actually the aesthetics, what they look like, is awfully nice. And as far as the density and how close they are, in quite a few instances, it's less dense than what an apartment building would be, quite obviously. Yeah. But I will say, I was out yesterday having a great conversation with Commissioner Pat Farr from Lane County, who visited yesterday, and this came up as far as the housing. We talked. The housing issue is a hot topic, but we talked about this, and he's in complete agreement with what we were sharing, and that is, number one, is that what's built out there today is really, really well built. It's safe. They're very efficient as far as energy use. Well constructed, and it's the lowest cost housing on the market out there right now. And so we can't afford not to honor the intent of this legislation that created this expansion. The intent was to somehow open the door for more opportunities for housing that's affordable. And right now, I think the way it's written now, you can have a manufactured housing built recently on a piece of property, but this currently, as it's structured, will not allow an ADU to be built unless it's built on a foundation and stick built, not a manufactured housing. So that's kind of a little bit of an irony there, if you will. So I'm hoping we can rectify that and do it in such a way that does not have negative impacts on the neighborhood, that has adequate parking and meets all those things. But more importantly, to build on Commissioner Humberston's concerns and comments, which I share, I don't think we want to see some of these old manufactured housing units in disrepair be allowed for people to live in. I mean, that's not, we don't want that to occur.
So, and I guess my question to you would be, is that sort of just a general premise regarding whether it's urban or rural, whether it's a primary dwelling or an accessory dwelling, that concern would be consistent sort of across the board?
Across the board.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that is a larger issue. We are assuming that we will be coming to you at some point in the not too distant future with a package of amendments related to housing, but we're waiting to see what the task force, ends up recommending. And that would be potentially a time to revisit these issues, including the possibility of doing manufactured homes for ADUs in the urban area, which I know you did talk about at your hearing on the first. In terms of the immediate issue, I think the question is if you're wanting to sort of do something different than what was done at your prior hearing, I think we have probably a procedural question about how we do that. We clearly wouldn't be adopting the documents that you have in front of you today. I will say this, it's in those 4 zones, those 4 rural zones, what would be permitted as an ADU is not different than what would be permitted as a primary dwelling. In other words, it's the same, potentially the same age of structure, potentially the same issues, the concerns that you're raising in terms of habitability or aesthetics. I mean, those are no different. So if that gives you any degree of, I guess, of comfort, there would still be a consistency there. But it sounds like there's kind of a bigger issue that you might like us to revisit in the future.
Well, there's 2 things. So I didn't want to impede our efforts to get something on the books today and get something going. On the same token, 2 aspects of this. Let me ask you a question first. Can someone roll in a 1950s unit and erect it as an ADU? Or
no, not correct. The oldest you could go is 1962. And I'm certainly not an expert on the basis for all the dates, but I think it had to do with some sort of construction standard, federal construction standard for building these. And so anything that's prior to that 1962 date is called a residential trailer. And we don't permit those as primary dwellings, and we wouldn't permit those as accessory dwellings.
Okay, so let's just say it's 1965 unit and someone rolls it in. Do we check for fitness and occupancy and all that?
Not under the zoning code. I actually am not familiar with whether there's anything that would apply from a building code standpoint. Again, as long as it meets the federal construction standards and has this appropriate tag on it that it's supposed to have, I don't know that they do anything beyond, obviously, electrical inspections, plumbing inspections. It's got to be connected to an approved septic system. So the type of foundation or whatever they're putting it on, those are all permitted. But in terms of the actual structure itself, definitely nothing through zoning, and I'm certainly not equipped to sort of talk about the building code side.
Well, the flip side, the other thing I just want to mention is that since we've been discussing this and since it's become state law, if you will, at least one person a week, sometimes more, are approaching me about an ADU concern. How do I do that? And pointing them to our department. But my concern to some degree is that if they are somehow go to the counter today and realize as today how it's structured, they need to be stick built, and it's going to cost them, let's say, $120,000 to build a ADU to specs under the current structure. And then we come back a few weeks later or a few months later and pass something that maybe we do it that allows manufactured housing to shave maybe 20, 30, 40,000 off that cost, let's just say hypothetically, that they're not discouraged or mismessaged. So I didn't want to have them get sticker shock and say I don't want to do it and never seek that effort again and look towards building that. So my concern, we might send the message that the way we're doing it is this way, and it's awfully expensive.
You mean if you were to delay doing something to, is that
No,
what
not
you're
delay,
thinking?
just if they just allowed it today, right?
Right.
Took action today, and they come in next week and they realize, okay, now I need to build it to standards. I'm in the urban zone, so it's going to be $140,000 to build that, and that might be a barrier right there. Whereas if it was $80,000 or it was $100,000, maybe it wouldn't be a barrier today.
Right.
So I don't want to send the message out there that we needed to build it at such a high standard that we're pricing that intent of the state law right out of the market.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to read ZDO 269 by title only.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we read ZDO 269 by title only. Well, I guess I got to vote, don't I?
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Let me ask the clerk to read ZDO 269 by title.
Okay. ZDO 269, an ordinance amending Chapter 4 and 6 of the Clackamas County Comprehensive Plan, amending Sections 202, 316, 317, 824, 839, 1015, 1204 and 1307 of the Clackamas County Zoning and Development Ordinance and adding new section 843 to the Clackamas County Zoning and Development Ordinance.
I'll entertain a motion to adopt.
I move we adopt ZDO 269, legislative amendment to the Clackamas County Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Development Ordinance, accessory dwelling units as previously approved at the August 1st, 2018 land use hearing.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt ZDO 269, legislative amendments to the Clackamas County Comprehensive Plan and Zoning and Development Ordinance, accessory dwelling units as previously approved at the August 1st, 2018 land use hearing. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Opposed? I'd like my vote to reflect my concern with the idea of not having created some boundaries that would help prevent the creation of junk heaps, basically, in these neighborhoods. I'm not opposed to the ADU concept. I'm looking at the quality more than anything else, so that we just don't have the spreading of junk heaps around the area. We have a difficult time enough as it is enforcing our codes. So I wanted to reflect that, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to discuss how we address that in the future. Thank you.
So it passes 4-1. We voted, yes. Okay. And next up is
Yes,
Don?
so the next item is ZDO 268, and this involves the adoption of a previously approved zoning and development ordinance. These are amendments to the special use and development standard provisions of the zoning and development ordinance. So, Mr. Boderman?
Yeah, that's exactly right. ZDO 268 are amendments to the county's comprehensive plan and zoning and development ordinance related to special use and development standards. At this point, this iteration of the board is probably well aware that we're nearing the end of a multi-year phased audit of our zoning and development code, and perhaps it's appropriate that on the last day that our planning director is with us, is before he goes off into retirement, we get to adopt this. So July 23rd of this year, the Planning Commission voted 7-0 to recommend approval of staff's proposal to the board for ZDO 268. And then you, as the Board of Commissioners, held a public hearing on August 15th and by a vote of 5-0, orally approved ZDO 268 as recommended by staff and the Planning Commission. Staff has drafted the ordinance before you today to reflect that decision, and it's also made the housekeeping edits like we typically do, like I described in the last hearing. And so with that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions, clarification? I'd ask for a motion to read ZDO 268 by title.
Mr. Chairman, I move we read ZDO 268 by title only.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we read ZDO 268 by title only. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ask the clerk to read the title.
Now I'm supposed to take a vote first.
Yep. Oh, that's right.
Between the two of you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, I'll ask clerk to read ZDO 268 by title.
Okay, ZDO 268, an ordinance amending sections 102, 202, 315, 316, 317, 401, 406, 407, 510, 511, 512, 513, 601, 602, 604, 702, 708, 711, 713, 804, 805, 806, 808, 813, 815, 818, 819, 821, 822, 824, 825, 827, 830, 832, 833, 834, 835, 836, 837, 840, 842, 903, 904, 1001, 1005, 1007, 1010, 1015, 1016, 1017, 1021, 1105, and 1307, of the,
Finally got to the end.
thank you. I'm not done yet, though. Of the Clackamas County Zoning and Development Ordinance and repealing Section 807, 809, 810, 814, 823, 829, 1018 of the ZDO. You can applaud now.
Okay, with that, I'll ask for a motion to adopt.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adopt ZDO 268, amendments to the special use and development standards provision of the zoning and development ordinance as previously approved at the August 15th, 2018 land use hearing.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we, moved and seconded by Commissioner, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. With that, we'll move to a series of public hearings. One of my favorite
Lists.
lists. We got to get the screen down so we can see what different light poles look like.
So, commissioners, I think you all need to get your phones out, the lights going.
And remind the audience, this is one of our more illuminating topics that we cover every year.
So we do have public hearings here for our street lighting utility service district number 5, and we have Wendy Coriel, who is our manager of our street lighting utility, to present 12 different board orders to you involving the creation of assessment areas for the service district. All right.
Thank you, Don. Good morning, Commissioners. Wendy Coriel, representing Clackamas County Service District Number 5. The district is the agency responsible for street lighting in the unincorporated areas of Clackamas County and also in the city of Happy Valley. Street lighting is required as conditions of approval for all new residential, commercial, industrial, multifamily developments, and that happens in the urban area of Clackamas County and the city of Happy Valley. Street lighting can also be installed through the district's petitioning process. Today, as you can see, there are 12 street lighting service areas for your consideration. 6 are in the unincorporated area of Clackamas County, and 6 are in the city of Happy Valley. The first 4 areas for your consideration are areas 0314, which is Fox Haven Estates. It's a 19-lot subdivision. 4714 is Gateway to Happy Valley. It's a 20-lot subdivision. 01-18, Jackson Hills. It's a Jackson Hills 5 is a 7-lot subdivision, and 4417 Crossroads subdivision, which is 68 lots, and we will be installing Westbrook-style lights and poles, as you see in the picture, and this will come at a rate W for $240.10 per tax lot each year. Next 4 areas for your consideration are 34-17, this is a new triplex, 0717, this is Robin Place 13-lot subdivision, 1318, which is, hopefully I said this right, Cheragino Farms 55-lot subdivision, and 28-18, a 7-lot subdivision. These will have Cobra lights and fiberglass poles, and these will come under rate C at $68.72 per tax lot each year. The next 1 area is 46-17. This is Copper Heights, 34-lot subdivision. We'll install Cobra lights on the existing wood poles, and this will come under rate B at $49.01 per tax lot each year. And the last 3 areas are areas 37-17. This is Princeton Village. It's a 104-bed residential care facility. And area 52-17 is Vogel Road 24-classroom elementary school on Vogel Road. And then area 03-18, which is a mixed-use self-storage facility. We will install Cobra lights on fiberglass poles. And these will come under rate D at $1.23 per linear foot of frontage per tax lot each year. Notice went out to all the property owners over 3 weeks ago, and no remonstrances were received from those. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
What if I don't like the light style for the Cheragino Farms? Can I require a different light style?
Well,
Checking.
we have a standard that we go by just, checking the area to see what meets that area's needs. And
City and a city requirement.
depends on, City of Happy Valley has a ordinance that requires we install certain styles of lightings in their neighborhood. In the rest of the county, we do what is usually consistent with the neighboring community and match up the lighting so that it meets the standards.
All right, thanks. So I'll open a public hearing and ask if anyone wishes to testify on this matter. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the board orders forming the assessment areas within Clackamas County Service District Number 5 as presented today.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the board order forming the assessment areas within Clackamas County Service District Number 5 as presented today. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. The next is, oops, I turned a whole page over. The consent agenda. I'd ask the clerk.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
You need to announce the adjournment of the Clackamas County Service District Number 5.
Oh, yeah, but we didn't open the Clackamas County Service District, did we?
Yeah, I thought you read that.
You announced, yeah.
Okay, well, I'll close. Oh, I see. The board will adjourn the Clackamas County Service District Number 1 and reconvene. So I did not announce.
Number 5. Number 5.
Yeah, District Number 5 and reconvene the Board of County Commissioners for the remainder of the meeting. But I did not announce the board will recess as the Board of County Commissioners.
No, the record will show that you made that decision as Clackamas County Service District Number 5, and the rest of the meeting will be as the County Board of Commissioners.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Ken. Now we're on to the consent agenda. I'd ask the clerk to read the consent agenda totally, every word.
By title, you mean?
By title.
Okay, today's consent agenda. Under Health, Housing, and Human Services, we have approval of a professional services agreement with Northwest EMS to provide services as the Emergency Medical Services Medical Director. Approval to apply to Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs for fiscal year 2019 distribution of fund grants. Under the Department of Transportation and Development, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with Oregon Department of Transportation for Strawberry Lane pavement repairs. Approval of Amendment Number 1 to the Supplemental Project Agreement Number 31087 with Oregon Department of Transportation for the Canby Ferry Bank Stabilization Intelligent Transportation System Project. Approval of a board order correcting Board Order 2018-013, accepting and simultaneously vacating portions of Audie Street. Approval of Amendment Number 3 to the contract with Parametrics for engineer services for the Carver Springwater Road and Highway 224 Signal Project. Under County Council, approval of a resolution declaring a local state of emergency and declaring emergency to address landslide issues on Dickey Prairie Road. Under elected officials, approval of previous business meeting minutes and approval of fiscal year 2018-2019 local subrecipient grant agreement between Clackamas County District Attorney's Office and the Children's Center of Clackamas County to support child abuse victims and their family. Under the Business and Community Services, approval of modifications to the Clackamas Workforce Partnership Local Strategic Plan for Workforce and Industry Challenges. Under North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District, approval of a grant agreement with Water Environment Services for river health stewardship, and approval of an assignment of intergovernmental agreement by and between Oak Lodge Water District and North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. That concludes today's consent agenda.
That's pretty short.
It's nice.
With that, I'll entertain any questions, any item anyone would like to pull from there? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Now you can ask your question.
So I'm just curious, the 360,000 for the Children's Center that's a pass-through from the state for prevention of child abuse, is that additional money that we weren't expecting, or was that expected and planned for?
Let me pull that item for you real quick.
Oh, I'll tell you which one it is, I'm sorry. It is on 23.5.
Oh, we got this here. So we are receiving $360,000 from the state of Oregon for child abuse and multidisciplinary intervention. And the district attorney has appropriated some $80,000 from his current budget to be dedicated to this effort with the Children's Center.
Do we know if that's additional resources that we weren't expecting this last budget cycle, or were we planning for those, or?
These are funds that we have regularly received.
Okay,
for this
so that's our contribution probably from, but we're receiving them now, which is why it's on the consent agenda, so that we can approve that. Thank you, Administrator Crop.
All right, with that, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Next is County Administrator update.
So I have a number of items for you. First, I wanted to announce that next week we have canceled our regular business meeting that ordinarily is scheduled for September the 13th, and this is due to conflicts with board commitments. The board will be attending the Greater Portland 2018 Annual Economic Summit next Thursday, and we also, of course, have the ceremony for the Veterans Shelter Project that same day. So we weren't able to actually reschedule the meeting that was the business meeting that was scheduled for that day, and we'll be bumping items that might have come in for that day to the subsequent board business meeting. And I also wanted to announce for the public that this weekend, Saturday, September the 8th, from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., we are going to be conducting our 7th annual community festival, and that's conducted right here down on the Red Soils courtyard here in the big oval circle. And so we are inviting the public and community to come and join us for a day of networking and fun and learning about equity and inclusion. This is really a family event that is focused on celebrating the rich culture and heritage of our region. There'll be food as well, so tasty food. And the farmers market will also be open as well, so it'll be a good full day of events here on the campus. Then I have some other items to share with you. We get, and this is constant. We get accolades for our staff over at the Department of Transportation and Development. They just keep on coming. Our traffic safety engineer, Christian Snuffin, he had attended a meeting of the Furwood CPO to talk about an intersection improvement project in that area, and the CPO was very pleased with the work that Christian had done and the county's response to the concerns that they had raised. And so we received an email from the CPO president, who also happens to be retired from the Portland Police Bureau. And this is what he said. In the Portland Police Bureau, there is an endearing expression, "He's a 10." And it's used to commend one who performed exceptionally well. Christian exceeded that number tenfold. His personality, demeanor, sincerity, base of knowledge, and concern for our issues is to be commended. And I just wanted to share that note with you and thank Christian for the excellent service that he's providing to citizens of Clackamas County. And then I'm also happy to relay to you that Shannon Bays, who's our Administrative Services Manager with Water Environment Services, has been named Woman of the Year by the Pacific Northwest Clean Water Association. This is a group that's dedicated to water resources and related environmental fields in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. The award recognizes women who've made significant achievements in the industry, serve as role models and mentors for other women and girls, and advocate for positive social change and give back to their communities. The ceremony is going to be held in Boise next month. And I just want to say, over in West, Shannon is one of the key players in advancing the work of Water Environment Services work on performance Clackamas. She's quite dedicated to making that effort move forward and assuring that we've got measurable performance standards for the work that that department does. So good job, Shannon. And then this past Tuesday, Senators Jeff Merkley and Ron Wyden announced that more than $2.7 million for new funding throughout Oregon is to be provided that will assist disabled individuals to better access affordable housing and other supportive services. Our Health, Housing, and Human Services Director, Rich Swift, said that because the rental market is so tight in our region, this award will complement our existing services and support our most vulnerable residents in need of housing. The Housing Authority of Clackamas County is slated to receive about $330,000, and Richard relayed that such funds can be used to assist up to 40 non-elderly individuals with disabilities, with a priority to serve residents who have been hospitalized. So very grateful for that effort there. Then I also have one other thing I've got to share with you, and of course on the heels of the board's recess, during that period of time, I have authority to execute certain contracts that ordinarily the board would have responsibility for approving, and my obligation under the county code is to read to you all through each and every one of those contracts. Actually, I'll just do the titles, but I need to share with you which contracts your county administrator has approved over the course of the past
It does not include that Tesla now, does it?
It doesn't include the Tesla.
Okay.
I bought that on my procurement card, so it's not on a contract.
Oh, okay. Oh, great.
That's a joke.
Okay,
That's a
so
joke.
we've got eight contracts here. The one is with Health, Housing, and Human Services. This was approval of an agreement with Good Energy Retrofit LLC for weatherization major measure construction services at $1,050. It's a 3-year contract. Then tourism, we have approval of a contract amendment with Borders, Perrin, Norander for their marketing agency of record services for the Tourism and Cultural Affairs Department, and that's part of a second year of a 5-year commitment under contract with this group, BPN. Technology services, we approved amendment number 3 to a service level agreement between Clackamas Broadband Exchange and the state of Oregon to provide services to the OLCC, the Oregon Liquor Control Commission. And then tourism, we also had authorization to renew our visitor information services agreement for additional 9 years for visitor services at the Mount Hood Cultural Center and Museum. And similarly, we have another authorization to renew visitor information services for 9 years with Clackamas Heritage Partners. And of course, this is at the end of the trail museum here in Oregon City. Then another contract was with WES to approve a contract between Water Environment Services and Braun Construction for design and drainage system modifications, capital project. And another contract with Technology Services, approval with intent to purchase with Environmental Systems Research Incorporated, also known as ESRI, a GIS server system and software upgrade. This is specific to West. And then also with ESRI through Technology Services, we have a GIS software maintenance upgrade and support and licensing contract, and that's sort of the umbrella contract for GIS services for the county, adding additional capacity for licenses here. Then the final contract was with WES for the purchase from North Star Chemical sodium hypochlorite for water environment services wastewater treatment plants. And that's it for now.
Well, thanks. What was the first one? I'm just kidding. With that, it's Commissioner Communication, and Commissioner Schrader, you're up.
Well, I actually have quite a bit, so I'll try and go as fast as possible. Yesterday, we had the Willamette Falls Locks Commission meeting. It was an excellent meeting. We're starting to hone in on a governance framework as well as funding mechanisms. We're starting to frame our legislative ask for the long session in terms of how we can maintain and get dollars in order to get the locks open as we partner with the Army Corps of Engineers. Army Corps of Engineers, plural, actually. This has been a long time coming. This has been around since I was first here as a commissioner in 2003. This is the closest we've come to unlocking the locks. And I do believe this time, because of the commission, the state's help, and the groundswell of support we're getting from all our heritage communities, and the Legacy Project on the Oregon City side, and the eminent, I hope, National Heritage Area designation, that this particular project is going to be a great part of that. So very good meeting yesterday. We're moving ahead, and our legislative delegation across the board seems to be extremely supportive of our efforts here. Also, I briefed my colleagues this week, or actually staff helped brief, on the urban growth boundary expansion vote that is coming up at MPAC next week. I'll be meeting with our land use folks today to get my talking points in order. We will be supporting this urban growth boundary expansion. It will largely impact the city of Wilsonville, which I believe is adding land for additional housing. So that's coming up. One of the things I wanted to mention is that as we move into September, the Association of Oregon Counties is starting to have their district meetings. So I will be traveling around the state to talk to all of our colleagues across the state. And actually, my first meeting is going to be, I believe, in Lincoln County coming up soon, to actually get our statewide agendas ready for the legislative session as well. Basically, I also looked up some economic data that I just recently received that I think bodes well for Clackamas County. And essentially, we have gained 2,900 new jobs from a year ago, from July 2017 to July 2018. And the sectors include, the largest ones are education and health services and construction. We really are experiencing strong job growth. And there's really the unemployed residents looking for jobs is down to a little under 8,000 at this point. It is interesting to me, however, and I'm trying to figure out, and perhaps my colleagues can help me, we seem to have a strong economy, we seem to have job growth, but coupled with that is a housing crisis. So I'm trying to figure out what that is, and I see Commissioner Humbertson saying, well, actually, it's wages. So as we look at job growth, we have to remember that we really want jobs that provide living wages so people can afford housing, decent housing, and in decent places to live. Okay, let's move on to the word of the week. Altruistic. It's a noun, unselfishly concerned for or devoted to the welfare of others, charitable, generous, philanthropic, benevolent, unselfish. Did you know altruism or selflessness is the principle or practice of concern for the welfare of others? Damon Faust's altruistic nature is a model to us all. Okay. Word. Yay, that is a good word. It's one of my favorites. Okay, arts and culture in the county. Start with the Sandy Library Coffee House presents Portland folk artist Corey Quinn with Bob Super. Enjoy free refreshments while selecting books and listening to music. Children's craft will also be available. It's a free event. It's family friendly. Library services will be open until 8. The coffee house happens the first Friday of every month, year round. Music, coffee, and dessert from 6 to 8 p.m. A fun family event. Friday, September 7th, 7 to 9 p.m. at the Sandy Public Library. Downtown Milwaukee, First Friday and poetry reading on an open mic. First Friday, Milwaukee is a celebration of art, music, food, and community. Walk around the city and discover artist installations in downtown businesses and City Hall. Listen to poetry readings, discover art gallery openings, dinner specials, dance performances, or join in the dancing yourself. Oh, that sounds like fun. Come visit the live music stage and check out the vendor plaza along with beer, food, garden across from City Hall. This Friday, September 7th, 5 to 9 p.m. in downtown Milwaukee. For more information on the arts, go to clackamasartsalliance.org. And I will mention also on Friday night, Lakewood Center for the Arts is opening with the musical Pippin, and I know that Commissioner Fisher will also mention, hopefully, something that Kirk is doing in the arts community. So,
Well, I just want to mention that on Friday, I will be at the poetry reading as one of the readers this Friday, so I'm very excited to do that, and I have been trying to decide which poem to read. I've been reading Emmett Wheatfalls, who's our County Administrator on Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. He is a wonderful poet, and I will be reading a selection as yet to be determined from his latest published book. So, yes.
Commissioner Savas. Yeah, well, I had some comments, but I think I'm just going to focus on what seemed to be the theme by default here today to some degree, and that's really about the housing. And certainly one of the most complex things we've ever encountered and we're facing, but I do want to just restate that what's changed in the last 3 years, that's where we've actually seen a significant change, or a significant number of homeless, and this situation's come to a head. And that change isn't wages, it really is the cost of housing. And there is a factor, obviously, of wages. There's more jobs, however, as Commissioner Schrader just pointed out, than there's ever been. So there's a lot of opportunity, and we need to do our best trying to help people connect their homeless situation, or if they indeed are homeless, and try to get them into a more affordable scenario than they currently are facing, because it's a large hurdle when the rents are $1,000 or $1,500 a month or more. But that's been the change, and I think that's a change that's impacting people. And it wasn't. It rang true when I went door to door during the campaign for re-election earlier this year. Some people are doing very well, and I think we're happy for all those people that are doing better. But there are some people that are struggling to pay their taxes. There are some people that are struggling just to keep the lights on, and we got to remember that. So I'm hoping that the board and the region and all the elected officials can focus on the cause. And I'm really pleased that everyone's focused and working on trying to deal with the here and now, what I call the symptoms. That's extremely important, but we need to work on the cause. Without the cause, if we don't work on that, then all our efforts will be all for naught, because the market will continue to rise if we do not do something to address that limited amount of land, and that demand for that land market is just exacerbating our situation. With that, I had I won't say really a recess, but we did indeed have a recess. But I think I was busy. I know Jim was also busy doing county-related activities. And I do want to say that next Thursday we'll be doing our ribbon cutting for the veterans shelter, and hopefully it'll be actually totally online and up and running by the end of this month, just in time for the weather. But I certainly want to just, and I'll save a lot of my comments for Thursday, but I just want to acknowledge all the staff help and the volunteer help in the last few hours here, or last few days or week here in the closing parts to get ready for Thursday. But I also want to acknowledge the extra efforts that I've seen from staff here lately that I've worked closely with on two issues. One, on the housing, that being Emily Klepper. She's been working hard. Yesterday, where was she? At the Veterans site, working to get things going. And during the holiday, not the holiday, but the recess, and even today, Tracy Moreland, my staff assistant, for her extra efforts on transportation meetings and so forth that she attended during her little vacation that she had. So everyone's trying to pull together to make things happen. I just want to recognize them both today. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Humbertson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, one thing I've learned now that this is our second hiatus that I've had the pleasure of enjoying is that if you don't get away, you keep working.
Yeah.
You cannot escape it unless you leave the country, as two of our colleagues managed to do this time, and I don't blame them. It has been a busy couple of weeks. I have attended quite a few community meetings and cruise-ins, from Malina to Oregon City to Sandy, continued to do drive-alongs or ride-alongs with police departments. It's interesting to find out their perception of our sheriff's department. So far, it's universally positive, which is nice to know. They coordinate effectively with each other. There was a Chinese delegation that I had that came early on in the hiatus, which I had the pleasure of joining for dinner, as did Commissioner Bernard. And then a surprise, had a luncheon to go to, and it turned out that was a luncheon for a surprise Chinese delegation from Dongtai, which will be one of the provinces that we will be visiting. Also met with staff and Commissioner Bernard regarding that China trip to make sure that more than just the relationship aspect, that we can look at some concrete objectives to try to accomplish as we move forward in this endeavor. Attended a Small Business Development Center Veterans Luncheon the other day out at the Harmony campus. And then had the pleasure of participating with Representative Salinas in an outreach program that they are doing at the state legislature. Our Democratic colleagues are reaching out, as are the Republican colleagues, both across party lines and across the mountain range, to get together and talk and really actually discuss what they have in common, which is considerably more than what they do not have in common. So joined Representative Salinas and Representative Finley from the other side of the mountain, and 3 of our Lake Oswego councilors for a breakfast. And I guess the last thing would be our CLT project continues. One interesting aspect is there's a property in Estacada that a business is looking at that is related to CLT. We did our first drone survey of land, which we have sent to that business to encourage them to take a serious look at this property and hopefully invest. And I will leave it at that.
Dog.
Thank you. This is Chica.
Oh.
Small in stature, but big in personality. She's a little gal ready to adventure out into this great big world. At under 10 pounds, she will need a new family that will be patient with her and help her to build her confidence as she adjusts to new surroundings. She would do best with children over the age of 9. If you have experience with shy, small dogs, she may be the perfect dog for you. She has so much love to give, but patience is key with her. Please come meet her today. For more information about Chica and other adoptable dogs, please contact Clackamas County Dog Services at 503-655-8628 or www.clackamas.us/dogs. Come meet Chica.
Thank you, Ken. And Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it is September. There's a little bit of Christmas in the morning air. I don't know if my colleagues have felt that. It gets warmer later in the afternoon. Children are back to school. That's always an exciting time with the school supplies, with the color crayons and the rain slickers and the notebooks and paper and paints and colored pencils and all that excitement and new school clothes for some. And it's just a sort of special time in September. And as we come back as a commission, I wanted to bring to my colleagues' attention, you may already know that the Oregon City School District is considering a bond, and I want to encourage all of us to get informed on that effort. I proudly signed an endorsement form a couple days ago to endorse the Oregon City School Bond. Their schools have not been upgraded for for, well, almost ever. They, they did pass a bond for New Oregon City High School, which resulted in great results in that. They have a 94% graduation rate, 40 clubs, 200 classes offered, and 26 classes that earn college credit, 16 advanced placement courses, and 27 athletic school programs. So they did some really great things with their bond that passed in 2000 to build themselves a new high school. Well, there's a real need for them to pass another bond, and they're going to be asking voters for 10 cents per thousand, which for the average home of 300,000 would be $30 a year. And part of the reason why this is so important is, first of all, for their safety and security, that's an urgent priority. They need to upgrade their schools. For that, the school buildings are inefficient and in need of repair. There are 2 schools that have significant challenges, both Ogden and Gardner, that need replacement. And I thought this was really compelling. The schools were built, the middle schools were built for 600 students. Currently, they have 800 to 875 students on each of their middle school campuses, which is 140% more than what the schools were designed for. So, as we're heading back to school and kids are there, let's not forget our local school districts and Oregon City, which is a part of it's the heart of Clackamas County. It's right here where we are located, and to offer our support and encouragement. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. A number of things. First, I'd like to recognize Mike McAllister, who has been at the county many, many years, is retiring today. He has parties this evening. Hopefully, some of you guys can go to it. We have C4 tonight, and it appears that I may have to lead that group tonight, so I may not be able to make it. So please wish him our best. I imagine our administrator will be there with a certificate, a very valuable one that I'm sure he'll put in his boat windshield as he goes fishing. So Mike's been, I've worked with Mike for many years as mayor. You know, the relationship, he's a great guy, loves to golf, loves to fish. So I hope he enjoys his retirement and his long retirement. Another thing, you know, we recently found out that there's a noise ordinance that is, the sheriff actually can allow that. We never really heard anything about it until some neighbors were awakened at before 2 in the morning with dump trucks dumping concrete at a site that was a negative impact on a lot of people. And one thing I'd like to look at, well, I'd like to look at that, who can sign an ordinance and the process, and find out, is there anything we can do about it now? Can we withdraw the ordinance, the variance? Is there something we can do to make sure this doesn't happen? Because this could go on for months, because...
I found this on the web for
I don't know why that happened.
Anyway, I'd like to look into that right away. Or could we just take that ability away from the sheriff's department? Because he may not, right now and discuss it later, he may not understand the impact. I don't know who signs the ordinance, how it's done, but it's something that is of concern to members of the commission and certainly to the community that it impacts. And Paul?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I believe that if I read it correctly, and I didn't study it in detail, but I believe there's an appeal process for the Board of County Commissioners to appeal it or rescind it or something of that nature. However, we rely upon notice of such, and apparently on this particular case, we did not receive notice, so we were unable to act. And there's also an issue I've been asking the administrator with is if we need to modify the ordinance to make sure that before approval, there's ample time for the Board of County Commissioners to act to implement or to exercise the appeal process or rescinding or whatnot. But, you know, I appreciate the chair wanting to look at it. I think we do need to look at it. For what I've seen, and I saw the application process for it, they don't mesh. The requirements that are required in the ordinance aren't asked for with any specifics in the application. So the application misleads the reader of that to, if I check all the boxes, I issue the variance, when in fact the ordinance says something different altogether.
All right, well, we'll get a look at that. I'd also like to thank Tracy Moreland for a presentation today, Damon Faust, National Firefighter of the Year presentation. Appreciate also the American Legion Post for recognizing Damon and requesting that award. Also, you know, there are a lot of things on the ballot. I've been getting a few cards in the mail, and one of them is Measure 105. I'm hoping that people will certainly, most importantly, vote, and secondly, vote no on 105. 105 is the sanctuary law, which was really the seed of 1977 in Independence, Oregon, where a Latino gentleman was at a restaurant, and a couple police officers went in and questioned his nationality. Stood him up, actually a couple of them, stood him up in the middle of the restaurant and asked him to produce proof of citizenship. Obviously didn't have any, even though he was a citizen of the United States of America. He didn't have any. I don't know if you guys carry stuff around on you, but, you know, I don't look like somebody who might be from another country. You know, it's also true that during the internment of the Japanese, that if you looked Asian, you you probably had to somehow prove that you weren't Japanese. Otherwise, you ended up in an internment camp. And of course, I know a number of people who were born and raised here their entire life, who are Japanese and who are Mexican Americans, or just plain Americans, but they may look differently. So these two gentlemen were arrested. They were brought to the police station. Someone had to come in and prove that they were American citizens. This was 1977. About 10 years later, the state of Oregon legislature considered this bill, and it passed. The sanctuary law passed. And I think it's important that, that we recognize that anyone who looks different in Oregon shouldn't be required to produce ID. And of course, this gentleman was very embarrassed having this happen in front of the public. So take a look at what's on the ballot. Make sure that you know, you vote your heart, but also vote no on 105. So with that, any other comments?
You know, Mr. Chair, I just want to say thank you for bringing that up, and I'm wholeheartedly supporting the No on 105 effort, and will be working on that as well as the Oregon City School Bond.
Ken?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in agreement with you for a number of reasons. Part of it for me is personal, as my wife is Hispanic, and her family was first-generation immigrants into this country. But more importantly, there's a lot of fear-mongering that has been going on, and assumptions that our law enforcement community, for some reason or another, might be unable to address the criminal behavior of people in Clackamas County. And the reality is if a federal agency gets a warrant regarding the potential criminal behavior of any individual in this country, regardless of their ethnicity, the Sheriff's Department will honor that warrant. I had breakfast or coffee the other day with the sheriff. I pointedly asked him that question, and he made it quite clear. You get a warrant, I will arrest the person. So this fear-mongering is inappropriate, and let's be clear that our Sheriff's Department and our city police departments will honor any warrant that is signed by a judge, and will deal with people that might be a risk to the public. The rights of everybody in this country are sacrosanct, and I believe it's the 14th Amendment of the Constitution has clearly stated that once a person is on this side of the border, regardless of how they got here, they are entitled to the full protections of the Constitution of the United States of America, and frankly, that's the way it should be. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Schrader.
Well, I also feel very strongly about this, and wish wasn't even on the ballot, but I'm a strong no. And also for personal reasons. You know, my youngest son is Korean. He's experienced racial profiling, actually, in Canby on more than one occasion, which he handled pretty well, I have to admit. And also, way back in the day, my parents, I was an exchange student to the Philippines with the American Field Service, and my parents helped sponsor my members of my Filipino family to this country, and they were physicians, they were lab technicians, they were nurses, and I'm still in contact with them today. And my Filipino sister grandson is actually going to be going to the University of Portland here, so I'll get to see them even a little more frequently. But back then, you know, I was in high school, and, you know, I just thought this was all a matter of fact and no big deal. But now I look back and as an adult and realize the effort my parents made to be inclusive and to really help people become citizens. And so when I was running my farm, one of the things I did was, as people were working there, was to actually help them get their paperwork done, move them to citizenship, make sure that they were getting their kids in school, and you know, I think it's a family legacy. So, no on 105. I think it's you know, kind of borders on being maybe inhumane, and we are better than that. So, there I go.
Commissioner Savas.
Well, I can actually share a number of Commissioner Schrader's, because I have Philippine family members as well, and a niece and nephew, and other ethnicities as well. So I've kind of grown up with that, and I've kind of shared some of that in the past. I guess whether it's fear-mongering, whether it's confusion, or whether it's people's concern, or whether it's what happened 17 years ago, we're 5 days away from what happened 17 years ago on September 11th, 2001. Or was it 2001?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes. 2001, 17 years ago. And I think we have to realize that, you know, there's our protecting our country is something of importance. And 17 years ago, we had a different mindset. And whether that's playing into some of this, I imagine it is. But there are very good people of all ethnicities that are citizens or want to be citizens of this country, or at a time became citizens of this country, that have contributed to our success as a country and fought in our wars as well. So I think we got to somehow separate the fear and the misperceptions, and make sure that people that are here illegally and committing crimes are handled and have the ability, law enforcement has the ability to protect us, because I think everyone wants to live safely. And those that are here legitimately and want to become citizens and want to follow the process are able to and have full access to that particular privilege. And unfortunately, I think it's a lot of miscommunication and misunderstanding that has led up to this. And it's not uncommon on any political issue that things get sometimes misrepresented and mischaracterized. And I'll leave my comments there for today.
And finally, I'd like to just add that now we could have put this on the agenda and made a motion and voted on it, but I don't want to ever put, I'm going to make an effort to never put somebody in the position of a political position. This is an issue that is personal and political, but I don't want to put anybody in the position of doing that. That's why when the First Amendment, or what was the? Second Amendment folks came, I didn't want to put that up for a vote because, or put that on the agenda because it's political. It puts people in a position that's uncomfortable, and I don't want people to be uncomfortable. So I appreciate everyone having the opportunity to speak on this, and with that, we're adjourned.